Thanks for watching Endgame Economics. If you enjoyed this video, hit subscribe. It's completely free for you, and it helps us continue making more videos like this.
Imagine it is July 2026. At a NATO summit in Ankara, the President of the United States steps to a microphone and calls for a total trade embargo against Spain. Then, for good measure, he repeats his demand that the U.S. take control of Greenland. Headlines immediately announce that the alliance is in its death throes. Public trust metrics plunge, and observers assume the most powerful military bloc in history has finally reached its breaking point. Historical data suggests a different story. In its 77-year history, NATO has never actually experienced a single uninterrupted stretch of total unity. While publicity teams maintain a facade of total consensus for the cameras, the alliance was built to function as a permanent internal argument. This friction is the direct result of three specific design choices welded into the alliance's foundation, mechanisms intended to keep 32 different nations under one roof. These rules date back to April 1949, when 12 countries met in Washington to sign the North Atlantic Treaty. Most people view Article 5 of this treaty as a blood oath, a strict requirement that every member must immediately deploy its army if another ally is attacked. The actual treaty tells a different story. To ensure it was ratifiable, lawyers included a massive loophole, stating members agreed to respond by taking such action as it deems necessary. The U.S. Senate required this elastic language to avoid forcing any president into automatic war. In theory, a member could satisfy its Article 5 obligation by sending canned goods and a strongly worded letter. This legal ambiguity is a core pillar of the alliance. It allows members to disagree or even underdeliver on military support without technically violating the treaty. Beyond the law, there is the economics of a collective good. When one superpower provides a nuclear umbrella, every small nation in the harbor benefits, regardless of whether they helped pay for it. This structure provides a rational incentive for members to underspend on their own militaries, resulting in 70 years of bitter arguments over burden sharing. Those arguments reached a new peak in 2025, when the alliance set a massive new benchmark, a commitment for every member to spend 5% of their GDP on defense by 2035. Nations like Spain immediately pushed back. They argued that hitting a 5% target would gut their domestic welfare states just to buy American-made weapon systems. While a spreadsheet can mandate higher spending, economic reality forces members to prioritize their own domestic survival over the collective military budget. Finally, there is the governance structure. NATO requires total unanimity to act, which effectively gives every single member an absolute veto over the entire group. President Erdogan used this specific rule to slam on the brakes when Sweden and Finland applied to join the alliance in 2022. Turkey used this blockage as cold strategic leverage, holding the entire enlargement hostage until it extracted a deal from Washington for F-16 fighter jets. This type of transactional friction has been part of the alliance for decades. NATO absorbed the Suez Crisis, France withdrawing from military command, and the split over Iraq. These disputes were survivable because, despite their resentments, all members still preferred squabbling inside the tent to facing the Soviet Union alone on the outside. In 2026, the core of the argument changed. The U.S. began a process of burden shifting, signaling its intent to hand the primary responsibility for European defense back to the Europeans. This shift triggered immediate conflict over which nation's domestic factories would capture the trillions of dollars in new weapons contracts. But the most dangerous crack is geographic. The alliance cannot agree on the actual threat. On the eastern flank, Poland and the Baltics see a 5-alarm fire, preparing for a Russian attack by 2030. Meanwhile, Washington calls Russia manageable, shifting focus toward China. Meanwhile, on the southern flank, nations like Italy and Spain view Russia as a distant abstraction, focusing their anxiety instead on migration and instability across the Mediterranean. Past crises were arguments over specific policies, how to handle a canal or an invasion. This is an argument over reality. If the most powerful member views a 5-alarm fire as merely a manageable problem, the shared pool of risk that makes the alliance work begins to evaporate.